Build it now.
That's correct.
Hey, everybody, how's it going? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
All right, holler if you can hear us on the YouTube live stream chat. Let's see here. Oh, Barry giving you a little guff here today, Ben. Remember yesterday you were throwing the wrapper in the trash can?
Yeah.
Hey, and you missed it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Barry says you need to work on your three-point game.
Man, there's a piano blocking the way. Did Barry see that?
There's no piano blocking the way. What are you talking about?
That keyboard right
You're
over there.
making that up.
That's the Dikembe Mutombo.
All right, holler if you can hear us, everybody. We're going to get started with the show.
I'll tell you what, Barry's tough on this jump shooter.
Ben, have your song of the day ready, please.
Uh-oh. Oh, my God.
All right. Playtime's over, all right?
Time to get down to business.
Your Ben Joravsky show for Friday.
Man, the water's good at the Sun Times.
Your Ben Joravsky show for Friday, January 24th is just moments away. But before we get into this, we need to thank the following unions for jumping on board and sponsoring this program. Unions like the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace, not Aerosmith Workers, Local 126 and District 8. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9. The International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150 are sponsors, as well as the Chicago Federation of Labor. Brianna on the live stream, I'm so sorry. But Ben Joravsky, let's hear that song of the day, pal.
Heard this coming in today. This is it. Make no mistake anymore.
One more time.
This is it. The waiting is over.
Oh, I just wanted to check. Yeah, that was awful. The Ben Joravsky show starts now. It is Friday, January 24th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, it's another Rummana Rundown with Chicago Sun-Times editor Rummana Hussain, and we welcome Loreen Targos with Alderman Byron Sigcho Lopez. And now your host, not an alderman, Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this I Love Michael Bloomberg Friday. And here's why.
That's correct.
Yes.
These titles aren't getting that creative. What was yesterday? I love Rex Hupke Thursday, and here's why.
Oh, yeah. I can remember. What a good memory you have.
Oh, I am the producer of this show.
God damn impressed.
You have a crutch, my friend.
I love Michael Bloomberg Friday, and here's why. Because I love Michael Bloomberg. Thought those words would never escape my mouth. Let me just explain. Michael Bloomberg is the former mayor of New York City. He's a gazillionaire. He's a billionaire with a B. That's billion with a B, D. All right? He's got a lot of money. Now, as I said...
Yes, that's billion with a B.
Thank you, Mayor Lori Lightfoot. Anyway, so yes, he's billionaire with a B. He's got a lot of money, a lot of disposable income. I think he's worth billion, someone told me. 50 billion. I think I read that somewhere, 50 billion.
50 million billion? Oh, my God. He's really rich.
The man's rich, okay? And when he's rich, to quote Jake Giddies. When you're right, you're right.
Oh,
anyway.
Boy, millennials hang tight.
$50 billion, a lot of money. Now, as I said, I never thought those words would escape my mouth. Politically speaking, we're opposites. He's a right-of-center moderate. Not even sure he's really a Democrat. He was a Democrat for a while, then he was independent, then he was Republican, and then he was independent, now he's a Democrat. Who knows what he really is, okay? Of course, then on the other hand, Bernie Sanders, who's number one in my polls right now, is not a real Democrat either. He's a Democrat socialist.
And number one in your heart.
Yes, I have the top 5 that I do, and Bernie's been reigning number 1 for like 3 months now. Okay. Anyway, so why do I say I love Michael Bloomberg so much? Well, because this dude is determined to defeat Donald Trump. He despises Donald Trump's administration. He probably can't stand Donald Trump for a million reasons that you would need to be a psychologist to pick apart. Who knows? Who cares? He cannot stand Donald Trump, and he's kicking in lots and lots of money to beat him. And there was a story in the New York Times I read last night, D. I almost called you. I was so happy, but I knew it was too late to call you because it was like about, I don't know, midnight or so. One thing
I was in bed.
Yeah, young Dennis goes to bed quite early.
Yes, I do.
Beauty sleep. He's usually at bed about 10 p.m. every night. Going to bed, Ben. Don't bother me.
Oh, I don't say that.
Going to bed, don't bother me.
He calls me at 10. I'm about to go to bed. No more phone calls. Don't call me to talk about Zion Williamson or
And
anything.
don't call me boy.
That too. Anyway, a Bloomberg ad on Fox and Friends hits its target audience when I absolutely love this very much. Oh, here's the deal, folks. He's been airing, as you probably know if you watch TV, nonstop commercials for, I don't know, a couple of weeks now, it seems. 3 weeks. I've lost track of time. I'm not a big TV watcher. I have a confession to make. But when I'm ever watching a game at a bar or something like that, and I see these Bloomberg commercials coming on, I'm like, oh, my God, he's really getting that message out there. And it turns out he's got this one ad that slams Donnie Trump for being hostile to the military. I'll read it to you, a description of it. Let's see, here we go. The ad is based on reporting from a new book, A Very Stable Genius, describing the language Mr. Trump used to excoriate military generals during a Pentagon meeting in 2017. The ad described Trump as erratic and pointed to the chaos in the Trump administration. Mr. Bloomberg's campaign manager, Kevin Sheekey, appeared on the show to unveil the ad on a Fox TV show, saying the military is, quote, an institution that everyone respects. I think people want our commander-in-chief to respect the institution, and I think he weakens the country by attacking it. The ad struck Trump with its focus on a topic he's often been concerned about, maintaining support among the military. Not only that, it was on Fox TV. Now, Trump's advisors have been advising him, boss, whatever you do, ignore Bloomberg. Ignore Bloomberg, okay? The guy's got $1 billion. He can just air commercials at you. You just want to pretend like he doesn't exist. Ignore Bloomberg. But apparently, young Donald saw that commercial on Fox TV and could not help himself, D. And sure enough, he did exactly what the advisors told him not to do. He tweeted out an attack on Bloomberg. Mini Mike Bloomberg is playing poker with his foolhardy and unsuspecting Democratic rivals. He says that if he loses, he really means win. In the primaries, he will spend money helping whoever the Democratic nominee is. By doing this, he figures they won't hit him as hard. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. This is so funny. Won't hit him as hard during his hopeless presidential campaign. They will remain silent. The fact is, when Minnie loses, he was spending very little of his money on those clowns because he will consider himself to be the biggest clown of them all, and he will be right. That is the President of the United States, folks, tweeting out his thoughts on Michael Bloomberg. He did exactly what his advisors told him not to do. He took the bait, he fell for it, and went after Bloomberg. Do you think Bloomberg's deterred? Hell no. This is a billionaire. That's billion with a B. He's airing even more commercials. He's doubling down. Now, here's the deal. I do not believe Michael Bloomberg will be the Democratic nominee. I believe he is too right. I believe that on many of the issues that I have problems with him, his past, stop and frisk and charter schools being top of the list, being one of those mayors who likes to dole out money to Amazon. Oh, wait a minute, all mayors are like that these days, so take that off the list. There's no better or worse than our own. But on all these issues that make him not my number one pick, I don't even think he's crashed the top 5 yet, D. So I doubt very much. I would say that most people who vote in a Democratic primary think along the lines of me, and they're not going to nominate Michael Bloomberg. I could be wrong. $1 billion is $1 billion, but I don't think he's going to be the nominee.
I mean, you're wrong a lot.
Yeah, I am wrong. Did I predict Lori Lightfoot would be next mayor of the city of Chicago? I think I did predict that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Oh, it's funny.
Every dog has his day.
It's true. A clock is right twice a day. A broken watch is right twice a day. Anyway, I do not believe he'll be the nominee, but I do believe that he will stay true to his word, unlike Donald Trump, who's very nervous about this, and he'll kick in $1 billion. Bloomberg said he'll put the $1 billion worth of campaign ads, negative campaign ads about Donald Trump, even if it's Bernie Sanders who's the nominee, even if it's Elizabeth Warren who's the nominee, whose left of center policies he disagrees with. I love it. I absolutely love it. Here's another line from the article. From healthcare to the environment to impeachment, the Bloomberg campaign has been running ads attacking Trump's record nationally, particularly in key swing states. The ad about pre-existing conditions was backed by more than $1.2 million in the Orlando, Florida market alone. But in further tweaks to Trump, the campaign is also running ads in his strongholds, such as $14 million worth of ads attacking the president in Texas. I'm telling you, D. Bloomberg as a billionaire is no joke. That's billion with a B. We got a great show today, everybody. Rummana Hussain will be in the show in a little while. We're going to be talking about Mayor Lori Lightfoot's curious comment. We'll talk about with you too, D, about who she's going to endorse in the presidential race. That'll be interesting. Loreen, Targos, and Byron Sixer Lopez will be here later in the show. Love Loreen, Targos, and Byron Sixer Lopez. He, of course, is the alderman of the 25th Ward, one of the most progressive aldermen in the Chicago City Council. She is a scientist for the EPA. And is also a brilliant political strategist, in my humble opinion, in her own right. So we're going to talk EPA, Trump, we're going to talk city council, and then we're going to take a deep dive into the whole Bernie versus Elizabeth versus Hillary versus where the Democrats should go. I was talking to Loreen briefly. Yesterday was like Elizabeth Warren Day on the Ben Joravsky Show. It's been Elizabeth Warren Day for a couple days in a row. The Bernie supporters are saying, hey, what about us? So Loreen's got a few things to say about Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton. Lots of great political talk ahead. But before we do any of that, oh yeah, the young man from Alton, the man they call Dr. Doobie, with the news.
Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. All right, for the fourth and final time this week, let's find out what's happening in Chicago and or Illinois this afternoon. Shout out to the live stream chat room, by the way. Weigh in, guys. We're going to need your help today for the local news. Weigh in with your opinion as we go along here because, yes, we're going to be talking about, once again, Lori Lightfoot and her endorsements or non-endorsements. But first, we got to talk about our Illinois governor, J.B. Pritzker. 3 times in 1 week? Yes, it's true. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker is doing governory stuff outside the city of Chicago. He had his his writing hand ready and a pen in his pocket. Today, he was at the state capitol at the Central County's Health Centers signing legislation. This particular legislation caps insulin costs for 1.3 million Illinoisans.
I'm telling you, it's progressive legislation from J.B. Pritzker. Michael Bloomberg, are you paying attention? Yes, you could be a progressive billionaire. Just because you have $1 billion doesn't mean you have to be some right-of-center guy. You could be like J.B. Pritzker.
And Bloomberg, are you paying attention? J.B. Pritzker goes places and talks to people.
That too.
I'm not just throwing it here. I don't want to talk to you. Just take my money and vote for me, please.
That too. Although, we'll take the money. Don't listen to Dr. D. We'll take the money. Keep running those ads.
Events? Ooh, icky. Just take my money. Vote for me. That's my Bloomberg. I've never heard the guy talk in my life.
By the way, keep running the ads. Don't listen to the doctor. Go ahead.
Then J.B. Pritzker was off to Carlinville, Illinois.
Carlinville?
Yes, we used to play Carlinville in high school, right near where I grew up.
Did they name it after George?
Possibly. Possibly. Whoa.
I caught him off with that one. He wasn't expecting that one.
My mind's blown. Not a 618 area code, 217.
Do you agree that George Carlin's in the top 3 of any greatest comics of all time list? Go.
I mean, had nothing to do with the local news, but yeah.
Okay, just needed to know that. Go ahead.
All right. He was off to Carlinville, Illinois. J.B. Pritzker was to the Carlinville Intermediate School to discuss investments in early childhood education. Boy, he's trying to hit that early childhood education home there. He was doing that yesterday as well. As for our Chicago mayor, it's the mayor goes to Washington, day 3.
Did we talk about that?
Don't even.
Sorry, man.
Lori Lightfoot is still at that Winter Mayor's Conference in D.C.
God, that's a long conference.
Today, she's moderating the Lessons Learned, Preventing, Preparing for, and Responding to Mass Shootings panel discussion. Meanwhile, on the home front, back here in Chicago, all of the Chicago political know-it-alls, including our very own Ben Joravsky, are talking about Mayor Lightfoot's primary election endorsements, or at least when it comes to the 2020 presidential race, her non-endorsements. And it's really her reasoning behind it that has everyone discussing. We touched on this yesterday, but the Chicago Sun-Times and Lynn Sweet put out more details after we ended the program. Here's Lynn Sweet. Mayor Lori Lightfoot, a Democratic progressive, is going to make a presidential endorsement before the March 17th Illinois primary. And after talking to her on Thursday, I'm pretty sure it's not going to go to progressive rivals, Senators Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. Lori said that she's, quote, apparently not progressive enough for Bernie Sanders or Liz Warren. And guys, this is me talking, not Lynn Sweet. A lot of you aren't going to believe me, but when asked to explain her reasoning behind the statement, Mayor Lightfoot actually brought up the two candidates supported the teachers and not reaching out to her during 2019 Chicago teacher strike, proving once again that this mayor holds on to a grudge tighter than a scared kid on a carnival ride.
Can I make a couple comments at this point?
Yeah.
All right, let me just add a couple things. Number one, in all due respect to Lori Lightfoot, I voted for Lori Lightfoot. Not once, but twice.
Oh,
okay?
my.
I voted for Lori Lightfoot. I don't think Lori Lightfoot really qualifies as a progressive. Now, I realize the word has been so used and overused and abused that it has no meaning anymore. And to a large degree, people have turned to the word progressive because they don't want to use the word liberal anymore. The word liberal has been tarnished by years of pounding and bashing by the Republicans. They'll get around to pounding and bashing progressive, and then liberals / progressives will go to another word. Now, I just call them lefties, but, that's not a very popular word either. So, but everybody wants to be a progressive. It still hasn't been tarnished. And I would say that Lori Lightfoot is more of an old-fashioned Chicago lakefront liberal. And as such, they adhere to certain conventional notions of reform. And as such, they adhere to conventional notions that you don't slam your wealthiest people hard with a tax because you want wealthy people to live in the city of Chicago. So a progressive is somebody who really champions the notion of a progressive tax that taxes the rich to expand programs for the poor. That's not where Lori Lightfoot is coming from. So I don't know why she would even want to call herself a progressive. She's more of a moderate, centrist Democrat. That's nothing wrong with that, right, D? Okay, it's a Big Ten. All right. That's how I view it. So why she would feel compelled to say, Lori Lightfoot, I'm a progressive, I don't understand it. She didn't run as a progressive. Well, I guess she kind of did run as a progressive. She's not really ruling as a progressive. Yeah. So this notion that the most progressive candidates in the presidential race, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, would be attractive to a person who's essentially an old-fashioned Chicago reformer liberal, I don't see why they would be attractive. I'd say her inclination would be to be supporting, I don't know, Joe Biden or Pete Buttigieg or Amy Klobuchar. Those would be the people that I would expect that Lori Lightfoot would want to support in the first place. So I don't know. Just being a black LGBTQ mayor does not necessarily make her a progressive in terms of economic and social justice issues. Just throwing that out there, D, is just a general thought.
So once again, you're not going to believe it here. Mayor Lightfoot actually brought up how the two candidates, Warren and Sanders, supported the teachers and not reached out to her during 2019 Chicago teacher strike. Here's the quote from Lori on Warren and Sanders, quote, "It is what it is. They haven't reached out. They've been to Chicago. They were very supportive of the Chicago Teachers Union strike, but didn't feel it was necessary to talk to the new black LGBTQ mayor. I'm certainly not endorsing somebody that has never bothered to reach out. So the other person that I haven't heard from directly is Biden."
Joey B.
And the hits keep coming, people. Lynn Sweet then asked Lightfoot what she is looking for in a Democratic nominee. Lightfoot said, quote, "Well, number one, I'm looking for somebody that I think truly has a shot at beating Trump, because the idea of 4 more years of Trump is incredibly frightening to me. So that's number one for me. Obviously, I'm looking for somebody whose values align with mine. I think the American people are incrementalists. We're not looking for revolution. We're looking for somebody who is practical, who's speaking to the values of the person, who's worrying about whether they have a paycheck. I could just hear our live stream chat room typing away right now.
Well, I'm about ready to type away right now. I remember reading it. Great, by the way. Can we give a shout out to Lynn Sweet? That was a very well done column.
That's correct.
The way she just did a very good job with this column. Go ahead, Dee.
So she says, we're looking for somebody who is practical, who's speaking to the values of the person, who's worrying about whether they have a paycheck, whether they're going to be able to take care of their kids, may have savings, build a future, and somebody who is going to be smart and able to put together a good team to take on the challenges that Americans are facing. But I think also for me as a mayor, I'm looking for somebody who recognizes that mayors, and particularly big city mayors, touch the lives of more Americans on a day-to-day basis than anybody else, and that the direct delivery of services to our people is critically important every single day. Lynn Sweet went on to say that the Lightfoot breadcrumbs seem to be leading to Amy Klobuchar, Michael Bloomberg, or, Ben, cover your ears, Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Dennis's favorite candidate. Just kidding.
How'd you know?
Wow. All right. Wow, there's so much to unpack there. I mean, let's just start with the notion of, what does she call it, incrementalists? Americans are not, most Americans are not revolutionary, they're incrementalists. You know, funny, moderates, I've been listening to mayors for a long time. When it comes to some change that they want, it's not incremental. It's we got to do it now. Change is hard, but we got to do it, right? How many times have we heard a mayor tell us, I know change is hard. I know change is hard for you to take, but we're just going to have to make you take this medicine. It's usually when they're trying to get us to do something we don't want to do. Like when they want to just tell old people in the city of Chicago, we're cutting your pensions. That's it. Eat gruel, Granny. Change is hard. I know it is. But you got to take it because we need the money. All right? Oh, so that's like no incrementalism there for Granny. It's going to take away Granny's food. You know what I'm saying, D?
I will now be using eat gruel granny in my daily vocabulary. That is excellent.
There's no incrementalism when they want to snatch a pension from some pensioner. No incrementalism there, okay? Now, how about when they want to give us Amazon and take $2 billion of our dollars? Well, what's the incrementalism there? We need to have a major change in the city of Chicago. We need this giant boost. We need a revolution of money. Go to Amazon. It's funny. They only want to be incrementalists when it involves something that most people want, like health care. I'm sorry, you're asking for too much, people. You shouldn't have to. You're asking, it's too expensive. We can't afford health care. That's a revolution. And Americans don't like revolutions. Most Americans want health care. I got news for you. This incrementalism stuff doesn't really work for people when you got to pay your bills. She talks about paying bills. How are you going to pay your bills when you're broke because you can't afford basic medical expenses? So I find it, I have to tell you, folks, I've been covering Chicago politics for so long, and I always irritates me when I hear a mayor talk about the need for sweeping change when it's change that nobody wants, but let's just stop. We can't afford it when it's something that people do want. So I believe the American people are ready, D. Oh, yeah. I think they're ready for some serious health care. I think right now, if you take Bernie Sanders' numbers in the polls and Elizabeth Warren's numbers in the polls, you add them together, they're probably close to 50%. And guess what? They're the ones calling for Medicare for all. So definitely the Democratic Party, the people are ready for health care. And I just think a lot of people who are in the Trump column are ready for health care as well. So this notion that somehow or other, going slow on things that people really want is practical and pragmatic. I would like to think that it's practical and pragmatic to be able to pay your housing bills and your medical bills at the same time.
Yeah, I think Lori Lightfoot just made her first mistake of 2020, taking this interview with Lynn Sweet.
No, it's just
the quotes on here are just too much here. What did she say here? I'm looking for somebody who recognizes that mayors, and particularly big city mayors, touch the lives of more Americans. I'm looking for someone that thinks I'm incredible.
No, okay, and then the other thing, And she starts off by talking about the teacher strike and the fact that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren came to town to stand with the teachers. And I'm just going to point out reality. And this is the reality. There were, 24,000 teachers, and there were teacher aides, and there were bus aides on the picket line. These are like bread and butter working people who are the heart and soul of the Democratic Party. On the other hand, you had Lori Lightfoot and her board saying we can't afford nurses. All right, let's go revisit that issue. We can't afford nurses, or we can't be obligated to put those nurses in a guarantee of those nurses being hired in a contract. All right? So what do you want Biden and Sanders and Warren to do? Stand with the one mayor and her handpicked board? Or the 25,000 heart and soul type people of the Democratic Party? At some point, you got to realize that any practical, pragmatic Democratic politician should be on the side of the teachers. Because I got news for you, folks. When Biden, Sanders, and Warren, whoever is the nominee, go out, send the troops out to Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa, Pennsylvania, all those swing states, they're going to be calling on teachers, rank and file, working class Democrats to go knock on the doors. You know, it's not going to be Lori Lightfoot and her handpicked board doing the knocking on the doors. It's going to be some regular old school teachers, teachers' aides, et cetera, and so forth. So I can't blame Sanders and Warren for standing with the teachers. I'm glad that they did it. So I think Lori's got to get over that one, D. I don't know. Of course, I was on the side of the teachers, too. I guess I'm just biased, D.
All right, so that's really all the news we're going to cover here in the local news segment of the day. Now we go to you, the YouTube live stream chat room. By the way, if you're listening on the download and you've yet to listen to the Ben Joravsky Show live, well, you really should. It's a fantastic time. You can watch us do the show, if that's your thing. See Ben's Bulls hat.
Go, Bulls, go. How about those Bulls, huh, D?
Please don't talk about that.
Zion Williamson.
The live stream chat room is always on and popping. Go check it out sometime if you're listening on the download. We highly advise it. All right. Brianna weighed in. She started off here weighing in on Mayor Lightfoot's comments here. She put incrementalist, really. So if you're a hungry, poor Chicagoan, you should just wait for help in increments. I'm just about done with LL, says Brianna.
Well, that's what I was saying, Brianna. Rummana Hussain has entered the building. Rummana Hussain is no incrementalist. Can't wait to hear what she says about this.
What do you think about Brianna's comment?
I think Brianna's right on. It's pretty much what I agree with. It's like when an ordinary Chicagoan wants something like, I don't know, health care, that's like a revolution we can't afford. So, I feel as though incrementalism is a word that's being abused in this particular instance.
Shout out to Dragon Slayer 19. And, buddy, if you keep this up, I know who's going to be live chat champion. Dragon Slayer 19 says, quote, I can only endorse someone if they personally court me.
Okay. That's exactly right.
And then he says, yeah, I'm thinking that she wants to endorse Bloomberg.
Well, that's what we were talking about yesterday, Michael Bloomberg. I think that's one of the candidates who's actually talked to her. I think I got that clear. I mean, to a certain degree, D, I'm going to go be fair to Lori Lightfoot. We're all just human beings, and human beings have, general feelings. And, if Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren come to town and stand up with the teachers and hug Stacey Davis Gates and don't show any love to Lori Lightfoot, she may remember that.
Our friend Roe weighed in and said, Lori is going for Biden, I bet.
I don't know. She said Biden didn't call her either.
Right. Biden, you better get on the phone, buddy.
Joey B, get on
I just read the paper. Lori, are you there? Please. Oh, that's my Biden.
That's your Biden imitation?
Oh, God.
No, who does that sound like? That's not Biden. That's somebody else.
That's a really old person. And then we got a discussion going on the top 3 comedians because you brought it up earlier, Ben.
Yeah, come on.
Let's see here. Radio Doogie weighed in. He says, top comedians because you can't take none seriously. Tom Ricketts, Donald Trump, and Rudy the Red-Nosed Giuliani.
That's pretty good. I'm writing down my top 3. Let's see what Rummana's are.
And Brianna's top 3 comics of all time, no particular order: Don Rickles, Richard Pryor, and George Carlin.
I would have to consider Rodney Dangerfield on that list, the great Rodney Dangerfield.
That's really good.
And but this is a generational thing. I'd be curious what Rummana has to say. She's a younger generation, so she may have some different comics.
All right, so who do you think Lori Lightfoot is going to endorse for president? Weigh in on the YouTube live stream chat. Let us know. And if you want your language, we're more than likely to read it on the air. Don't go anywhere, because coming up, Rummana Hussain's back, and it's the Rummana Rundown. We're live from the Chicago Sun-Times. It's the Ben Joravsky Show.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
Rom, Vice President Joe Biden made one of his final moves before the debate starts to show a video of him basically bear hugging President Obama. Smart move. Why is he doing that?
I think he also got a hug back.
Yeah, he did.
But no, yeah, it's a smart move. It's his calling card. It's why he has the strength he has among Democratic voters, is because he served with a very, very popular president. It's what surprised me in the last debate when people were throwing the president under the bus. I mean, you have a person who's at 90-some-odd% popularity with Democrats. That is not a smart strategy. I do agree with Matt. This is going to be about the energy. There's more about a chemistry that you're going to associate, and the closer the candidate can put their own story with the story of where people live their lives, the better they're going to be. They're not going to follow all the details about this policy versus that policy. It's about relating, and they feeling that they can relate to that candidate and that they understand them where they live their lives.
It's Chicagoland's adult entertainment playground. It's the world-famous Admiral Theater, 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. The Admiral is homegrown from Chicago, and it's the most conveniently located club in all of the city. 15 minutes from the O'Hare Airport in downtown Chicago Loop. Voted Chicago's best strip club, the Admiral has showgirls galore and a variety of adult entertainment shows. The world-famous Admiral Theater, open every day from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. For events, showtime, and other information, visit AdmiralX.com. Must be 18 years of age or older to enter.
Hey, welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Every Friday, Rummana Hussain, Rummana Rundown. Rummana, editor here at my beloved Bright One, the Chicago Sun-Times. And I've been, Rummana, bumping you in the hallways a couple times this week and saying, oh, we got to talk about this, we got to talk about this. And then I always forget what we're going to talk about. But one thing, I cannot let Rummana get out of the studio without asking her for her thoughts. Remember to remind me this, Adi.
Oh, okay.
We were talking Bernie versus Hillary at one point early in the week.
So if you forget, it's my fault.
Yeah, it's your fault.
Okay.
And the notion that I'm going to write a column about this is so on my mind that of getting things done, the whole concept of getting things done. I'll get Rummana's thoughts on that. But before we do that, let's just continue the conversation where we just were, Rummana. And I have a list of things I want to talk about. The Harvey Weinstein trial in New York is definitely on that list. We'll get into that. Harvey Weinstein has a lawyer who is from Chicago, a woman. We'll talk about that. But Lori's preferences for mayor. Lynn Sweet wrote a great column in today's Sun-Times.
Yep, I read that.
Really well done by Lynn Sweet. I got to give her a shout out about Mayor Lightfoot. Her views. Lynn just captured them, just put it out there. Gives you kind of a glimpse into who Lori is, how she views the world, who she is thinking about voting for or supporting or endorsing for president. What were your thoughts about that?
I thought it was interesting. I mean, she's definitely feels snubbed because she hasn't been contacted by I think it was Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders that she specifically called out. And she said, I guess I'm not progressive enough for them. They don't want to meet with the new black LGBTQ mayor of Chicago. So I know she feels snubbed, so she's taking it very personally. So it'd be interesting to see who she is going to endorse. I don't know. I would think that if I was the mayor of Chicago, that wouldn't be the only reason that I wouldn't vote for someone. I don't know if I necessarily... I understand being snubbed. I understand that, especially being the mayor of Chicago. Like, no, she feels like maybe a lot of these elected officials feel like they don't really have to. These Democratic candidates really have to reach out to her. Like, will it really matter who Lori Lightfoot endorses? Would that change your view? I don't know. I'm just thinking, as an average voter, would that really change the way they think? If someone is endorsing, Bobby Rush earlier this week endorsed Bloomberg, and I don't know, does that really make an impact in the city of Chicago? And obviously, Bobby Rush is different than Lori Lightfoot in terms of, I guess, the hierarchy of, politicians in Chicago. But I don't know. I mean, it's different than if it's Barack Obama, I think.
Yeah.
Make an endorsement than Lori Lightfoot. That's just my personal opinion. And it's not taking anything away from Lori Lightfoot. I think the same would be said of any mayor of Chicago, whether it was Rahm Emanuel or Mayor Daley. Would that really make a difference who they endorse? That's just my personal opinion.
Well, I mean, I've thought about this because I remember back in the day when Daley could have had an impact, and he stayed out of the presidential race of 2004. And I always thought it was because he and the Bushes were very close. And if you recall, George Bush flew to Chicago to celebrate his 60th birthday with Mayor Daley here in the South Loop. So it's like, well, how could Daley be employed? A guy like Daley, you know what I mean? Like, how could you use Richard M. Daley if you were the John Kerry campaign? How tactically, where would he be useful? So like Rahm Emanuel, I don't know. How would you use Rahm Emanuel if you were, say, the Hillary Clinton camp? They've kind of hid Rahm Emanuel. They wanted anything to do with him back in 2016. So I'm not. Your point's a good one. I mean,
I could be. Like I said, I'm not that politically savvy as you are. So I'm just thinking as a layperson. I'm not even thinking as a reporter. I'm thinking Lori Lightfoot's endorsement really wouldn't make a difference in my life.
Yeah, and also
but it's just funny how she's really peeved about it. So
upset.
So mad. It just seems like she's taking it really personally. But Lynn Sweet mentioned how those three reached out to the teachers during the whole teacher strike, and they wanted to just say, I'm with this group. And Lori Lightfoot, I think with Elizabeth Warren's camp, she said they weren't interested in.
Wait, you mean the presidential candidates were for the people?
Yeah.
Weird. Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Not just one person. The people.
Yeah. There were. I'll just do some basic math. There were 25,000 striking Chicago teachers and one mayor. Okay. 25,000.
Yeah. So that's why I'm sure it's a political tactic on their end too. It's like they're probably thinking it was so close to the teachers' strike. Do we just call up Lori right now and ask for her endorsement? I don't know. Who do you think she's going to endorse?
If I had to put money...
Do you think she'll even endorse anyone?
That is a great question.
There is that option.
There's that
right?
option.
She doesn't have to say anything.
Yes, she does not, although everybody's going to ask her. Well, they'll ask her, who are you going to vote for? Which is a question that comes up all the time. And the primary is about 2 months away in March. So she's not a delegate to any slate. If she was going to endorse one, if I had to put money on one candidate, Bloomberg. I think that's when I think about Lori Lightfoot as mayor, where she stands in the ideological map. Mm-hmm. She's close to Michael Bloomberg in so many ways. The way they approach the city, she's not a champion for progressive taxes, soaking the rich. She's said many times that that's unfair to the well-to-do. We have to keep them in the city. We don't want to just tax people out of Chicago. So it's kind of a Bloomberg approach, and yet at the same time, she's liberal on things like the banning styrofoam and plastics, which is very Bloombergian. So if I had to put money on it, I would say she'll go with Michael Bloomberg. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. I've seen on Twitter some people Buddy. How do you pronounce his name? Buttigieg.
Buttigieg. Mayor Pete.
You know, it means father of the chicken or something.
Whoa.
Or
does it?
I don't know. It's something like that because I told you I went to Malta, right, over the summer.
Yeah.
And
that's where Buttigieg's father is from.
Yeah, and so we saw a sign with that name, and we're like, hey. And then we came. When we got Wi-Fi, we Googled it, and his father's from Malta, and Maltese language is very similar to Arabic, which I'm familiar with, at least with the sound. I can't speak it. I can read it. So we kept thinking, we're like, this sounds like they're speaking Arabic. And it turns out it is very similar to Arabic because there were Arab traders who came through or people who spoke Arabic who came through Malta. So I don't know. I saw a really interesting thread this week by someone who said that I'm surprised Buttigieg's name hasn't come up and what it means, during the camp. So it was something about chicken.
Would you think she might support Buttigieg?
That's what some people were saying on Twitter. I saw a lot of chatter on Twitter a few minutes right before I came here. But I think he's going to Mayor Pete. That's what because I think people call him Mayor Pete because it's too hard to say his last name.
Absolutely, that's what.
Yeah. Plus, he said, "Call me Mayor Pete." Although a good friend of the Ben Joravsky show,
I'm gonna make my prediction on who Lori Lightfoot it's gonna be Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren's gonna make the call and call.
You
her
think
up.
so?
Yep.
Yeah.
Warren will make the call. Lightfoot will be fine, and it's gonna be Elizabeth Warren.
Not Bernie.
Yeah.
Making the call. Not Bernie.
God! In a million years, she's not doing Bernie.
Then she could do Hot Girls for Bernie. That was a trending on Twitter right before I came in.
I see. That was Rummana Hussain who said that, not me.
My husband pointed that out to me before I came in. So.
I go Bloomberg. I'm sticking with my Bloomberg bet. And so wait, you did not come up with one before we move on to Harvey Weinstein's trial.
Well, who I think?
Yes.
I don't know. I can't. I don't think it's a clear winner here, and I think she may not even endorse anyone because she'd be so mad.
All right, I'm gonna go.
And maybe somebody
will
call her, and she doesn't like the phone call. That's what I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just being realistic.
All right, now let's move on to the Harvey Weinstein trials in New York City. Harvey Weinstein, of course, the big, huge Hollywood mogul producer. He's got like 30 years of accusations from women of sexual harassment, rape, and he kept his power until 2017. When I guess it was Ronan Farrow, I want to say, broke the story in the New Yorker.
And then it was the New York Times, too. Wasn't it
Times.
like Megan Twohey and Jodie Cantor?
Yeah, there were, and I think they shared a
they shared a byline. Yeah, you're right.
And so anyway, since then, more stories about him and his abuse have come out, and now he's facing criminal charges in New York City. There's a Chicago angle to this. Not that we need a Chicago angle to talk about this. His defense attorney is a lawyer from Chicago and a woman. As I always point out, Rummana Hussain, before she became an editor here at the Chicago Sun-Times, covered the criminal justice, the criminal courts here in the city of Chicago for years and years. Sat through more than one criminal trial. All right, so the first day. Talk about the first day of testimony this week.
Was it yesterday?
Yes, it was either
was
yesterday
it 2 days
before.
ago?
Yeah.
I don't know what happened the first day of testimony. I'm assuming that's opening statement, but I know yesterday I saw the actress Annabella Sciorra. I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing her name. She was the actress, if everybody remembers, in Jungle Fever, and she was also in Hand That Rocks the Cradle, I believe.
Is that right?
I think so. I think she was the
She was in Jungle Fever?
She was in Jungle Fever. She was the person, Wesley Snipes.
No, that was a different actress.
Who's the no. She's the love interest in that.
Well, anyway, continue. We'll have our crack investigative team look that up. But I believe it's a different actress.
Who did you think it was?
I'm blanking on the lady's name. I could see her face. I don't know. I can't remember. It was a long time ago.
That was the first time I saw Annabella Sciorra, but she was also in The Sopranos. I think she played Tony Soprano's shrink, from what I remember.
No, different actress. Doesn't matter. Let's go. Yeah, I'm telling you now.
I think that was Loreen Bracco.
You are correct.
Yeah, but she played. I guess she played his girlfriend or something. Anyway, she's an actress, and I remember reading about when these articles came out in the Harvey Weinstein allegations. She is an actress that said that Harvey Weinstein sexually assaulted her in the early 90s, and it really hurt and derailed her career. Because if you really think about it, have you seen her in many things? You haven't really. I think she was in The Sopranos, but that's about it. Anyway, she had harrowing testimony yesterday. Now, we should remember that Harvey Weinstein's actually on trial for 2 incidents, one that happened in 2006 and one that happened in 2013. And these other women that are going to be brought in, including Annabella Sciorra, are brought in to show that he, because I think the statute of limitations on that case obviously is expired. And so a lot of these women, so we may be seeing a lot of, headline, a lot of actresses come and testify, people that we know. So she came in as a witness just to talk about the other allegations that are out there. And from what I read, Rosie Perez was seen in court today. And I believe Annabella Sciorra went and told Rosie Perez about this assault when it happened. So I know that was a pretty big deal when she took the stand. And so far, it's been pretty interesting. And then, everybody's seen Harvey Weinstein on that walker, which I've never seen him on until the trial started. So I just kind of find it interesting.
What'd you think about that as a cynical, jaded criminal court reporter when you suddenly saw the defendant with a walker?
I was pretty cynical about that.
That director knows how to tell the story. That's what I thought.
Just coming at, he's never seen, this is a very serious case, so I don't want to make jokes about it, but do you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Yes. Well, I don't watch it on a regular basis, but I am a huge fan of.
It started again last week.
Yes,
right?
I do know that.
So
I'm gonna have to borrow your HBO account.
Are you gonna watch it?
I love. Okay, now we're on a tangent with a tangent,
Sorry.
and that's okay. That's where we usually go. If I had to put, okay, we were talking about the Mount Rushmore of comics. Larry David would be a strong candidate. The last 30 years between Seinfeld, Curb Your Enthusiasm. You got to say he's had a huge contribution to comedy and just our sensibilities. So anyway, I'm a big fan.
There's Jeff Garlin, who plays his manager. There's a scene where these women think he's Harvey Weinstein. They're like, why is he at this party? He's despicable. And that was that kind of once or twice that was mentioned. And there's another thing with the MAGA hat. It's so funny.
Yeah. No, Larry, see, that's the thing. Okay, we're going to go.
I'll talk about that with you later. But anyway, there was a Harvey Weinstein. There are some Harvey Weinstein jokes in there because people thought Jeff Garlin was Harvey Weinstein. It probably happened in real life. But anyway, so the Weinstein case, I actually have been paying attention to it. I was kind of keep a side eye on it and just pay attention to it because the Me Too, I think a lot of women are paying attention to it just because of the Me Too, the awareness that's out there and the discussions people are having are pretty interesting.
Well, the yesterday the testimony was really sobering, and it was a very powerful testimony. But then to refute the testimony, what Harvey Weinstein did, his attorney is from Chicago.
Donna
Rotunno, yeah.
Rotunno, yeah.
She is a lawyer based here in the city of Chicago.
And I have seen her in 26 in California.
All right, talk about her.
There was one. I have seen her actually in court. I maybe have done 1 or 2 cases involving cases where she was the attorney. Apparently she defends a lot of men who are accused in sex cases, and she's won most of them, I think, except one. There was a former high school football player that was convicted of a rape. I think that was one case that was mentioned in the New York Times article. There was just one case where they mentioned where there was this designer from the South Side, and I actually covered that case when it happened in bond court. And as a lot of people know who cover the courthouse, sometimes a lot of the cases, you covered the initial bond hearing. So I remember someone had called me and told me that eventually he was found not guilty, this designer, and he was mentioned in the New York Times article. And so I remember doing a follow-up story because I said if I did a story on him being charged, we have to do a story, at least on the record, saying that he was acquitted. So I think, I believe I did do a follow-up story. I don't remember, but I remember getting a call from someone. Which is a fair point because, there are so many cases we cover where someone gets charged and people forget about the cases and, we move on to the next story. There's, being in a city like Chicago, there's so many cases that you cover. And I used to try to keep a list of things, but sometimes they fall through the cracks. So I thought that was definitely fair.
Well, there's,
that, go ahead.
In an instance like Weinstein's case, there were so many people who've come out and said, he abused me, he raped me, he sexually harassed me. There's so many compelling stories that have come out. and I at the same time, I have to remember that the man is. We're supposed to be innocent until proven otherwise, and so when Donna Rotuno is the lawyer, her whole purpose is to just destroy the credibility of whoever is coming forth to testify against, in this case, Harvey Weinstein. And Rummana, she doesn't play around.
No.
It's
But
not nice.
as we saw in the article, a lot of women would probably do have an issue with her defending Harvey Weinstein. But I guess if I was Harvey Weinstein, I would probably want a female attorney as well, because just having another guy as an attorney would be more detrimental to his case. So she probably took his case. You know, he contacted her, from what I understand.
Yeah. All right. Now,
yeah, some of it, I think a lot of women would have issues with, and a lot of activist groups have, a lot of groups for women.
Here's the cross-examination. It's set up when Annabella Sciorra had said that one night she was in her hotel room and there was a knock at the door. She thought it was a neighbor or her doorman, but when she opened the door, Weinstein pushed his way inside. When Mr. Weinstein unbuttoned his shirt, she said she realized he thought we were about to have sex. She said she considered running into the bathroom, but before she could, Weinstein grabbed the front of her nightgown, pushed her into the bedroom, and raped her on the bed, pinning her arms above her head. All right, so this is really gripping testimony. Then Rotuno, the attorney for Weinstein, gets up and attempts to discredit Scora's testimony on cross-examination, pointing out that the actress could not remember the exact date of the alleged assault and several other details about the night. Ms. Rotuno also asked Scora why she would open her apartment door without first finding out who might be on the other end. So you heard this knock, you're in a nightgown, and you don't say, who is it? Rotuno asked. No, Scora said. I opened the door and he was right there. Now, obviously that's an attempt to just undermine her credibility.
Yeah,
what do you
of course.
think about that?
I mean, she's doing what she has to as a lawyer, but I think a lot of people will tell you, what does that have to do with her opening the door, like, without asking? That doesn't mean the sex was consensual, right? Correct? And, how is she going to remember the exact date? It was in 93, 94. So this is just a tactic that the lawyer is using. Some people would say it's unfair, but she is, she's defending her client. So I think chipping away at the credibility of someone who says they're a victim is very common. But, this is a woman, so it's like a different, and, a lot of people, I have covered rape cases, or I've heard of people covering rape cases where a lot of people still blame women, even if they're females. There was a rape case, I forgot, a couple of years ago. It was a gang rape that happened in the suburbs, and I don't want to say what suburb because I might be saying the wrong suburb, but I remember I was sitting next to a reporter who covered the case, and it was a case where the young woman was intoxicated and it was a gang rape, and there was like 3 young men involved. One even fled the country, and the video, she was drunk, and they had videotape evidence, and she was drunk. So people still, she was the 3 men, I think, eventually got away. They were acquitted, or there was, I don't know if anybody pled out of it, but it was an interesting, compelling case. And I remember the reporter covering it said there was a lot of women on the jury. So, what she's doing is chipping away her credibility, saying like, what was she doing in her nightgown, opening the door without asking? She knew Harvey Weinstein. She just had dinner with Harvey Weinstein, from what I recall. And she probably, she's probably getting at, she knew it was him. And she was standing there in her nightgown, just kind of painting her as someone who, was okay with this.
Mm-hmm. And then at the end, she closed the cross-examination. She played the jury a video clip of Scora appearing on Late Night with David Letterman in 1997. In the clip, Scora admitted that she had made up little lies about her life, saying, for instance, that her father once raised iguanas in the circus. In a rebuttal minutes later, the lead prosecutor asked Scora if she had ever lied about matters as serious as her allegations against Weinstein. No, she said. This is not a tale. No. I mean, again, first of all,
that's completely different. Not to say, a lot of actors lie about a lot of things when it comes to their backgrounds, but getting raped, I don't think people would necessarily.
Yeah,
lie
I mean,
about.
you
I'm just
embellish
saying
a story. when
Yeah,
you're
I mean,
telling
a
an
lot of people
anecdote.
embellish their stories. It's
Yeah.
kind of like Vanilla Ice saying that he grew up hard and he's like not really, you know.
Vanilla Ice analogy.
I'm just saying it happens a lot with these celebrities. They say that they came from these like backgrounds and they came from a completely different background.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you ever saw Fear of a Black Hat. It was a
I'll have to write
parody.
that down.
It was a parody on hip hop. It was kind of like it was a really funny movie. And then it was like not a parody on rap, but it was kind of like a documentary on a rap group. It was like a mockumentary, and it was really funny. It came out in the early 90s, and, you know, there was like these rap guys, and one guy is like, yeah, I grew up really hard, and they find his like old like yearbook, and he went to like some really prep school, and he had this like preppy sweater on. It was just a really funny. It's a funny movie.
Dennis will now do one of his favorite bits to that point. Your name is Clarence, and you went to blah, blah. Remember that?
Oh, it's 8 Mile, right?
Very good. Look at it. We've been together a long
Ben
time.
likes that.
Yeah. I saw 8 Mile,
Yeah,
too.
Eminem did that, where we was having the rap battle with the guy. Your name is Clarence, and you went to blah, blah.
Yeah, Fear of a Black Hat is really funny. I mean, it might seem dated now, but I think Chris Rock is in it, too. It's funny.
I just... I read these stories. I understand what's going on. I understand that Harvey Weinstein's entitled to a offense. I don't know. When I read that exchange, unless a juror has a bias, in my opinion, favorable toward Harvey Weinstein or negative toward his accuser, I don't see how that would be convincing. You know, it's like, chip away your credibility. Oh, you once embellished a story on David Letterman. Oh, therefore you must be making up. You know, it's just, I don't know. I guess she has to do what she has to do.
And I read an article today also. I mean, I'm sure Donna Rotano, however her name is pronounced. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing her name too. You know, there's going to be other people that are going to be testifying, and a lot of these women still talk to Harvey Weinstein after these alleged attacks took place. And so today I was reading an article about how people still, you know, it's a very common thing for victims to still associate with, you know, the men who raped them after these incidents happen. So they said it's not uncommon. A lot of these, like, you know, psychologists I was reading some articles right before I came in. So, you know, she's probably going to mention that too, because a lot of these actresses still worked with him. Correct?
Well, yes.
I mean, you know, I've read so many articles by so many different, you know, there's so many different actresses who have penned articles about what happened to them.
Well, listen,
And
we're getting
so-
into a whole different territory, which is bigger than the whole issue of sexual assault. When you have the power dynamic
Of
in
course,
a relationship,
yes.
You can intimidate. Let's just move away from something as horrific as rape and just talk about a general workplace.
Of course.
If you have an abusive boss and your boss is a total jerk, you still
Talk to them.
you have to talk to them, and maybe you're trying to work your way out of an awkward situation, so you be nice to them. So then later on they can say, oh, you weren't that offended. They don't know. You go home and you're like really upset about it. You know, you're talking to your wife or your husband about, God, that guy's a mother. And everybody advises you, just be calm, deal with him, blah, blah, blah. Right? Am I telling you the truth?
that's happened to me.
Yeah, it's happened to all of us, right, D? Yeah, you know, I can name a few names.
As can I.
Yeah.
Incidents too.
Incidents. So it's like, then they throw that at, well, obviously you didn't have a problem with him.
Yeah.
You sent him this nice note.
Yeah.
I got to deal with the jerk.
Yeah.
You know? So I understand. Obviously, Harvey Weinstein doesn't have much of a defense.
Yeah,
if
but
this
I'm
is
going to
what
say
he's
this
coming
is
up
what
with.
the defense is going to bring this up. I guarantee you, with as more women come and testify, there's going to be that whole thing. You know, there might be pictures of them together. You know, at the Oscars, the actresses with Harvey Weinstein,
Yeah.
and you know, Harvey Weinstein. If anybody, you know, you and I watched the Oscars, he was kind of like a mainstay there. And I am a fashion fan, so I knew that his wife was also she's a designer, and Marchesa is the label that she had owned. And I don't know if you know, but the dresses they have. I remember just seeing them, and I'm like, they look like an odd couple. But anyway, she must. I think as a woman, she must have known this stuff was going on. But obviously, once it became a big deal, she divorced him. She was much younger than him, and her dresses. I go on different websites, and obviously, I look at a lot of dresses I can't afford, but her dresses have plummeted. Like
just the association with.
Yeah, I don't think actresses wear her dresses anymore. And not that they were like the hugest designers, but him, her being married to him, her design shop, her Marchesa would always be written about in fashion magazines, and it's kind of gone cold since then.
Here's you mentioned it's a natural transition to what next on our list to talk about the Oscars, but all those years, I'm like you. I watched the Oscars. I remember Harvey Weinstein front and center.
Yes,
I've read stories about how he engineered propaganda machines to get his actors and actresses either nominated or once nominated, they'll become the winner. And what a powerful force he was. And everybody in Hollywood had heard the stories.
Yeah.
And
that is terrible, actually.
Yeah.
That everybody stayed quiet about it. Yeah. I think, I know a lot. I'm not blaming the victims, but a lot of the people hearing about it. That's one of the reasons why a lot of women don't like Quentin Tarantino.
Yep, I know.
I'm just telling
I know.
Because
hey, like you haven't told me this one before.
I'm just saying.
You're right.
So a lot of people feel like, especially the men, and they watched it happen, and not blaming the victims. I'm sure there were some women who were sitting on the sidelines, not the actual victims, but everybody was part of it. And then, so that's why a lot of people feel like, all of a sudden when they're mad at Harvey Weinstein, they're all wearing black.
Yeah.
So it's like, wait, you
very
were
hypocritical.
You were sitting there okay with it until he got caught. So I know that criticism's out there too.
And that's why you gotta love Ricky Gervais. Come on, he puts it right in their face.
He made me laugh.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was funny that all these conservatives were all over him. They're like, oh yeah, Ricky Gervais. I'm like, Ricky Gervais is an atheist. They would probably get mad at him when they hear his other thing, his other commentary and other things. So I'm just like, I usually don't like him, but I thought he was kind of funny.
No, he is funny, but he did the first jokes he made. Whenever he makes a Harvey Weinstein joke, I get a kick out of it because you're right. They tolerate it, and Quentin Tarantino, Joanna Klonsky comes on the show quite a bit. We call it the Creep Report. We talk about the allegations against powerful men, and Quentin Tarantino did
He's
the apology.
Creepy. Yeah,
he did the apology to. To all his fans and to the actresses he worked with, that he claimed he didn't do enough to stop Harvey. And if you see those early Quentin Tarantino movies, there's Harvey Weinstein's production company right there as a producer. It's kind of awkward, to put it mildly.
For sure.
But anyway, all right, let's make the transition before I let you get out of here to the Oscars. I just want to promote next week's show. I'm really looking forward to this. We're going to do a special bonus Oscar predictions. Rummana is been so nice. She's agreed to participate. The great Sergio Mims, who probably knows more about movies than any person I've ever met, will also be there. And Danielle Scruggs, who is a photographer, a journalist, and a movie reviewer for the Tribe, will be there as well. I talked to Danielle. She's seen all the movies.
Oh.
All right. So
I guess I have a disadvantage there.
Which one haven't you seen?
I've seen most of
I
them.
think you've
Probably
seen them all.
80 to 90% of them, but I still haven't seen Uncut Gems, so I can't weigh in.
Oh, well, you don't have to worry about it because it didn't get an Oscar
anything.
on
I know, but
anything.
there's got to be. Oh no, Joker. I didn't see Joker.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm a disadvantage.
Dennis is really upset. It's his favorite movie.
I know.
Hey.
So the guys on the copy desk wanted me to give me my top 10 movies of the year, so I told them yesterday. They all, one guy was telling me, everybody agreed, like 3 or 4 guys agreed that they liked Parasite the best.
Oh, Parasite's awesome. All right.
And I told him I deliberately kept Once Upon a Time in Hollywood out of there.
So it's not in your top 10.
No.
So showing solidarity with women in Hollywood. We're going to do, this is going to be a blast. We're going to have the list. We're going to, you're going to be able to take it to Vegas. We're going to steal a page from Roger Ebert and Richard Roeper. We're going to predict which movies make it. So you could just go over to Indiana where they're taking bets right now. Yeah. Rummana's going to tell you which movies are going to win and then which movies should have been nominated. It's going to be a lot of fun.
No gambling.
No gambling allowed.
Yeah, can we put money on this?
Yes,
No, I'm just
absolutely. Are you
No
kidding?
gambling.
I'm kidding.
Anyway, so before I let you go, we always ask for a recommendation. What are you going to be watching this weekend?
I started Watchmen on HBO a couple days ago, and it's actually very good. It's based on I think it's a superhero novel. I don't know if it's a comic. It's a novel, right? But it's very good. Regina King is in it, and Don Johnson's in it too.
Well, someone else came on the show this week and said they were watching that and really enjoyed it. One Troy Laravier.
Yeah, Troy Laravier.
So
Great minds think alike.
And there's definitely there's a lot of race. It touches a lot on race. It's supposed to be in 2019, but it's very dystopian, futuristic. I think you would like it a lot. And I told you, I don't know. Dennis is young, so have you heard of You on Netflix?
I heard you say it.
Dennis is young. He's young. He'll know.
No, because I heard about it. People were talking about it last year, and I don't know. I can't see a lot of guys liking it, but Penn Badgley, who was on the Gossip Girls, was it Gossip?
Gossip. Oh my
yeah.
wife.
So
God,
anyway,
she
might like Penn. They might like You, but it's about this guy who's an obsessive. He kind of like obsesses over women, and then he's a murderer too. But it has a lot of like they always play his thoughts in his head, and I binged through that. And I saw Midsummer. Did you see that yet?
Haven't seen it. Is it worth seeing?
So
scary?
on the face of it, it's a good movie. It's not great, but I think a lot of the symbolism it's like a smart movie. And that's what I was telling the guys in the copy desk yesterday. I'm like, movies like Us, Parasite, and Midsummer, they're just creative. So I give them more points for the creativity because there's a lot more subtext in Midsummer than I thought. Hereditary, it's the same guy who made Hereditary, was a lot scarier. Midsummer's creepy, but it means so many different things.
All right, I'm gonna
like white supremacy, men. And I think he did the female character very well.
I will
which is
check
very
it out.
rare for men.
Because Hereditary was a really good flick, except the ending was really stupid. Rummana Hussain is my guest, and I want to thank you very much for being on. We got Loreen Targos and Byron Sixer Lopez up next.
Actually, just got a text from Loreen. It says here, bad news. Byron's caught up in a critical meeting with some aldermen about something. He cannot make it.
Wow.
But
Breaking
Loreen
news.
is still on her way. She asked if that's okay. I said, hell yeah, come on
anyway.
And so it'll be Loreen with us defending Bernie Sanders this afternoon.
Oh, yeah, get ready for that one. She is ready to defend Bernie Sanders. Rummana, we've had a lot of Elizabeth Warren people coming in through the studio this week, very upset with Bernie Sanders and some Hillary people. Of course, Hillary Clinton blasted Bernie. So when I talked to Loreen Targos about that, she said she had a lot to say in defense of Bernie Sanders.
Interesting.
So
I'm sure a lot of Bernie people have a lot to say about it.
Well, I have my issues. I've already weighed in on this more than once with Hillary Clinton's whole behavior. I get this whole thing, Rummana, post-election behavior. So I think about former mayors and how they are after they're out of office. Daley was okay. He just kind of left the scene, didn't. Mayor Rahm, not so okay. You know what I mean? He's just got Mayor Daley, when he left, I don't know if you remember this, he said, you know what? I'm not running for re-election. I'm going to allow my next mayor to make the appointments that he or she wants, and I'm not going to shove anything down your throat at the last minute. And that's kind of how he did it for the last 6 months or so. Mayor Rahm, of course, had the 2 huge mega TIF deals shoved down our throat. So
and he's a writer now, too.
Yeah, now he's a great writer.
Take a chill pill, man.
Oh, sorry, Rahm. Anyway, Hillary Clinton is another one I put in that category. I really have problems with the way, Hillary Clinton, you're not running for office anymore. You don't hold office anymore. But you feel compelled. You talk about airing your grievances and gripes. You're ripping Bernie all the time. You're ripping Bernie bros left and right. So it's just, I don't know. I'm just not feeling Hillary Clinton the way. And I voted for her in 2016.
And at the end of the day, she has a right to talk, right? It's freedom of speech. But yeah. I'm just saying, no, I'm sure her fans think, let her talk, But I know what you're I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Trust me.
I mean, yeah, I'm not saying she doesn't have a right to talk.
No, I know, but you're just saying
I got a right to talk about what she's talking about.
Exactly. No, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's like when someone tweets and everybody piles on them, I'm like, well, they shouldn't have tweeted that. If they weren't, they should have, if you basically don't stay in the, what's that whole phrase about staying in the kitchen? I'm like forgetting idioms now. If you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen.
Right.
So Hillary shouldn't expect
Hillary-
people to stay quiet after making those comments about Bernie Sanders.
Absolutely. All right, Rummana saying thank you very much. We'll take a break and be right back. People in Illinois opt to be cremated. Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
It's the butter cow, which has 9 hearts to represent the 9 essential nutrients in milk. That's right, it's made entirely out of butter, and it's a state fair tradition since at least 1922.
Hey, everybody, what you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffemanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. J-E-F-F. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
All right, everybody, hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky show is minutes away. We're still waiting for our guests to arrive, and when our guests arrive, Loreen Targos, we will get into hour number 2. But until then, hey, Fran Spielman Show has another new show this week. This week's guest, the 32nd Ward Alderman and the committee finance guy, Scott Wagaspack. Well, around here we call him Scooter, don't we, Ben?
Scotty Scooter.
Scotty Scooter Wagaspack, all right? He was Fran's guest this week, talking all things styrofoam, plastic, and banning it. He talked about that and also aldermanic prerogative. Here's a bit of Scott Wagaspack on the Fran Spielman Show. You can download this at both ChicagoSunTimes.com and wherever else you download your favorite podcast. Enjoy.
The plastic steers or plastic, straws or plastic spoons. They look at it and they say, I'm a new generation, or we have learned how to move away from these plastics. So I think they're going to see less reliance on people calling for plastics when they show up at a restaurant. Not every restaurant, but I think you see it now in a lot of other ones. And when I look overseas, in Asia, in Europe, those consumers have already started that shift, and you're not seeing the impact that I think a lot of the lobbyists here are claiming is going to be there.
So the cost is a couple of cents more for each.
Yeah, that's if you're packaging something for takeout.
Yeah, which is a lot. I mean, that's the growth in the restaurant industry. That's, you know, the delivery, and that's where all the grocery stores too are going. You know.
Yeah, the delivery is interesting too, because you do have a bunch of companies like Uber Eats, Caviar, Postmates. They're undercutting the restaurants in other ways that are being more impactful than any environmental issue. And that's something else we're going to be talking about, I think, in the months to come.
What do you mean? What are you going to do there?
Well, I'm talking to restaurants who feel that, in terms of delivery issues, in terms of these companies undercutting the way that they're operating, basically saying we're pushing more delivery and we're not following a set of rules that the restaurants have to follow. There are restaurants who are concerned about that.
So what would the city council do about that to help them?
Well, I think we just have to have a conversation to make sure everybody's following the same rules that the restaurants have to.
What rules are the delivery people not following?
Well, I think my understanding is some of them aren't registered companies. Some of them are using old menus and things that some restaurants don't even sell anymore, and it's the restaurants that bear the burden of a negative review or a negative report from their consumers. They don't realize it's some of these other companies that are distorting their what they provide. But I think and I have a lot of restaurants in my area. I've definitely got a ton of people that are very active. I would try to work with them on these different issues. And going back to the styrofoam and the plastics, we do see a lot of them that are moving in that direction proactively and trying to be environmentally friendly because they know their consumers are. If you go into these restaurants and you look at who's eating there, you're talking about families, you're talking about children who are already saying, I don't need this plastic, I don't need this straw. And you have a lot of restaurants that are saying, things like straw by request only or plastic spoon by request only. I think what it helps restaurants do too is it actually helps drop their bottom line in terms of what they have to buy on some of these plastics, because people are, my kids show up with their chopsticks when we go out to eat. We bring our own. And when I was just in Malaysia, in Southeast Asia, there's a lot of restaurants there who are actually charging you, or you have to ask for chopsticks by request or other utensils by request. So they're not just giving things out freely anymore. They look at it and say, this is a cost to us. And they're actually saving money by reducing the automatic human reliance on a straw, a plastic spoon, a plastic stirrer.
All right, that's all you get. If you want to hear the rest of that, you're going to have to go somewhere else for it, all right? And I'll tell you where to go. Chicago.suntimes.com, and wherever else you download your favorite podcasts. It's this week's Fran Spielman Show and her guest, 32nd Ward Alderman Scott Scooter Wagaspack. Your Ben Joravsky Show, hour number 2 for Friday, January 24th is just moments away. But before we get into this, we need to thank the following unions for jumping on board and sponsoring this program. Unions like the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126, and District 8 sponsor this program. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9 are sponsors, as well as the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Can't thank those unions enough for jumping on board and sponsoring this show. And, of course, today's program is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2
has begun.
Oh, my. Got Fran Spielman there. Hold on a second.
If they can come to you in January of next
Fran,
year.
now I'm sorry. Hour number 2. Let's go. It is Friday, January 24th. And live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, we're defending Bernie Sanders with our good friend Loreen Targos. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist, Benny J. Ben Joravsky.
Loreen Targos has been a guest on the show several times. She wears many hats. She's an activist. She is a scientist. She is a EPA employee. She's a leader of her union of EPA workers. She stuck her neck out big time, and we applauded her. I wrote a story about her in the Reader, standing up to Trump's EPA appointees unveiling a sign. What does the sign say exactly, Lorena? I can't remember the exact wording. It was about protecting workers.
Yeah, it says, "I care about EPA workers having a fair contract and climate change. Do you?" ?
Yeah, and this was at a ceremony where she was getting an award from the EPA for her work as a scientist here in the Chicago branch. So before we take the deep dive, talk all the political talks, and she's also a supporter of Bernie, and she brought me this sticker.
Let's see that sticker. Oh, what's it say?
Bernie beats Trump. On the back it says, the most important thing for many Democratic primary voters is to beat Trump. What most people don't realize is that in poll after poll, Bernie beats Trump. That's pretty funny. Bernie beats Trump. All right. I have to start, before we start talking about all the issues of the day, I just always do this when Loreen comes on the show. I protect my guests as much as I can. The views and opinions of Loreen are those of Loreen and not necessarily those of the EPA. Is that correct, Loreen? Is that how I say it?
That's 100% correct.
Yeah, so she's speaking for herself, and all my right-of-center buddies who love Trump and hate the environment and don't believe in climate change, you believe that right-wingers have First Amendment protected rights of free expression, so you should stand by those principles when it's a person on the left side. Don't you agree with me on that point?
You know it.
All right, so if some right-winger has the right to come to the University of Chicago, give a speech insulting women, blacks, Hispanics.
Advocating for taking over Latin American democratic countries.
That too, and they have a First Amendment protected right to do it, then Loreen Targos has a First Amendment protected right to speak her mind when she comes on the Ben Joravsky Show. So there we go. All right. So I know that Donald Trump believes in the First Amendment, and he will not use his flunkies at the EPA to punish her for speaking her mind. All right. Phew, got that one out of the way. All right.
No collusion.
Oh, thank you, Donald Trump. All right, I was going to start with EPA, but let's talk Bernie, let's talk Hillary Clinton, let's talk Elizabeth Warren. I had a brief phone conversation with you yesterday, and I was telling you about some of the criticism that people who support Elizabeth Warren have been making since they've come on the show. And also Hillary Clinton had her criticism as well, and that somehow or other Bernie Sanders represents a misogynist movement in the Democratic Party, anti-woman movement, that he has a woman problem in terms of that so many of his supporters are hostile to women, and the Bernie Bros, etc., and that will hurt him when he's running. That's sort of the general argument that's been made against Bernie Sanders. I presented that to you on the phone yesterday, and you were like ready to go. So let's just start with your basic reaction to that.
Feminism is about the liberation of women, not token elevation of women who agree with the values of the status quo. If you look at who Bernie's supporters are, 60% of his small donors, who are not billionaires, are women or non-male, whatever, women, I think he classifies them as. And the leading professions are teachers and nurses. Those are professions that have historically been designated to women. And if you look at the reason that women are oppressed and marginalized, it's because they want to entirely devalue our labor and exploit our labor to for men to control the means of reproduction and labor at home, laundry, cooking. All of that was designated to women. And so when women go into professions, they go into, a lot of them go into teaching or nursing. And what are those jobs? They're underpaid, and you see that those jobs, they're accredited to, a teacher should be doing it as a labor of love. She loves the children. She loves the job. Why does she need a raise? Why does she need a fair class size? And it's like, treat us as professionals as you would scientists and lawyers and CEOs. It's a job, and we do our jobs because we're passionate and we're mission driven, but we also need to live and eat and feed our families and survive under capitalism.
But I love where you went with that, Loreen. That's the notion of teacher as missionary. And I've dealt with this one so many times because there's a special disdain, I feel. Unions are bashed all the time anyway. It's a very pro-union show. As I always say, we're supported by unions. I'm a member of a union. But unions generally have been bashed. For the last 10 years, it's been a rough go for unions. The last 20 years, really since Reagan. But teachers' unions in particular really get ripped. And I've always maintained that it's because the people who are beating up on unions think it was somehow easier to beat up on the teachers' union because of it's mostly women. Mm-hmm. I've always felt that Mayor Rahm went after the teachers' union because he thought it was the easiest union to pick on. He learned his lesson from Karen Lewis. Mm-hmm. But I've always believed that. Do you share my sense on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the narrative that was going on during the last teachers' strike, they survived because of solidarity and parents and the coalitions they built. But the status quo narrative against them, that Stacey is a union boss, she's a teacher, and she had to get into the struggle because she's an effective leader of the struggle. And we need to recognize that, when there's a rank, and CTU has a very prominent and well-known history of rank and file leadership, and their bargaining team was 40 rank and file teachers and staff. And how can you say that union bosses were controlling that? I mean, other unions where it is in a closed-off box, where members don't really have as much of a say on what's going on at the table, you could make that allegation and it'd still be weak. But against teachers' unions, they are the most rank and file organizers you can think of. And they're leading the way for other unions like mine to show us how to organize and bargain for things that are really essential to our jobs, but that we don't maybe think of as default what should be in our contract. But they're showing us that, in fact, that's how we're going to win power back for the working class against the billionaires who exploit our labor.
All right, let's go back to the discussion of Bernie. I think a lot of the animosity has to do toward Bernie's supporters. And so the accusation that gets hurled at Bernie is he's not done enough to check the rhetoric of some of his more obnoxious supporters on the internet. What's your thoughts on that?
I see a lot of parallels with that and my husband's campaign. He's Alderman Byron Sigcho Lopez in the 25th Ward. During his campaign, some of his supporters were maligned for being rude, and Byron was blamed for not keeping them in check. And he had gotten that criticism in the past when some organizers would go confront another elected official, and that elected official would tell me, oh, well, Byron's not keeping his people in check enough. Excuse me, these are residents of the community who are trying to hold you accountable. And I've found, as I've seen this through the years, that there is not 100%. There are fair criticisms. There are some people who are just rude and obnoxious and should not be abusive. And Bernie has disavowed that behavior. But on the other hand, there is a class aspect to this. There are the people who are supporting Bernie, the people who supported Byron, I see explicitly. These were people who, there was a guy who, and he wasn't one of the people who was blamed as abusive, but he had a fire in his building, and he ended up saving people in the basement who were still asleep. He was a hero, but he couldn't afford another apartment because that building burned, and now he doesn't live in Pilsen. And there were so many people who came to volunteer on his campaign who he had helped when they had been evicted. And experienced the deepest violence of capitalism in all the different ways that Bernie supporters have felt it, who are the most passionate. So there are going to be some people who support Bernie who are so desperate for his solutions and are so disenchanted by everything else that they're not going to be as articulate, they're not going to be graceful as they advocate for people to vote for Bernie. They're not going to be as persuasive as someone like me who maybe has more experience with communicating my ideas in a persuasive way without being offensive.
No, I can. When you're saying that, I'm smiling because I know how I get.
And I can get.
Oh, I can't even get the words out.
Like I think about it when I was a kid. I remember being at Thanksgiving, and my mother's a fairly conservative woman, and she there was an argument with a guest of a relative and my mom about that women shouldn't have only married women should have birth control. And my mom's like, yeah, why do you need birth control if you're not married? And I was like, and I was a teenager, I couldn't articulate why she was crazy. I was just like, ugh. And this guy was like, and she gave a story of like, oh, there was this woman in my town when I was growing up and she went and got herself pregnant. And that's why women shouldn't have birth control. And I asked her, and the guy stood up to her and he's like, oh, could you go in the bathroom and show me how a woman goes and gets herself pregnant right now? My mind blown, that emoji of the, and I had never seen her so so effectively checked. And that made me aspire to be as sharp.
An effective communicator.
Effective communicator. But when I was younger, all I could do was go, you're wrong. Ah.
Well, what do you think is the most effective way to get to that? That Bernie can communicate his message, that, let's say, I'm thinking of one thing that's on my mind right now, that health care for all is something that society can afford. And this is one of the great, how do I put this, Loreen? This is just one of the great inconsistencies that drive me crazy, where I see the issue is constantly framed when it comes to something that we want, healthcare for all, as something whether we can't afford because it's going to raise taxes. But when it's something we don't want, like the military budget necessarily, it's just assumed that we can't afford it. So how do you think Bernie can more effectively communicate that?
I think it's that's something I've been a little bit obsessed with, a little bit more so since I saw Sacha Baron Cohen's speech at the Anti-Defamation League, where he gave like a 30-minute speech about how the 6 Silicon Valley CEOs were more powerful than Congress because they control how social media and the internet and how things are communicated. And I've started to think more precisely about who defines what is possible and who defines how the conversation changes, what narratives are pushed in the media. And a lot of Bernie supporters, and even any fair-minded person, has seen how Bernie is so misrepresented in the media at every turn, and people are starting to break through that. And that's why I think we're at this watershed moment where more and more people are starting to see all the things they thought was impossible all along, like those bumper stickers back in the 90s that I remember where, the military doesn't have to do a bake sale for their bombers. Mm-hmm. And people would just say that and think, I'm the only one who thinks this, so nothing can change. And actually, we'll find when Bernie Sanders becomes president and audits the Pentagon for the first time in its history ever, we will find that we can save $1 billion of waste just from the audit. And so there's a program right there. And once, we have someone like that in office, and people believe in it. Like, I think when Byron was running for alderman, a lot of people were like, Pilsen's lost, it's gone. And I have heard stories of how life was like there, 15, 20 years ago, and how there was like a cultural genocide already in the east part of Pilsen, how much has been lost and people don't realize. And now that he won and there's a chance that, there's more affordable housing, that families can stay, that predatory practices of developers are going to be curbed, more people believe who didn't believe before the election. And so to see Bernie succeeding in spite of all the opposition, more people are seeing every day that it's possible. And once you allow them to believe something's possible, allow their imagination to run in a way that their imagination hasn't been allowed to run in a long time, it's going to be unstoppable. And that's something that we can only discover together as a society. We're making history right now, and everybody can play a part, and that's what's so exciting. Like there was the movie Other Guys. There's a part where Will Ferrell is playing this nerdy cop along with.
I love Other Guys.
Yeah, and
you're,
then,
by the way, the first guest who's ever raised the Other Guys as in an analogy. Would love to see where you're going with it. Go ahead.
Well, there's a part where like Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell are fighting, and then Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg's proposing some macho man solution, and Will Ferrell turns and just goes like, well, they're in New York City. He's like, what about 9 million civically engaged citizens all just doing their part? And he got punched in the face or something. But that might be what's happening now. We're all engaged, and it just takes like 3% of a society to be like woke. I think they carried a guillotine to the governor's mansion in Puerto Rico last night. It just takes a small segment of society to activate and talk to their networks, and it grows and it grows, and the billionaires can't stop them. We saw it with that low down attack with Warren last week. It remarkably failed with her saying that he's a sexist, and all of us going, oh, we have receipts. There's no way that he would, because we know, like, I would never say something that I don't believe. He's been a politician for how long? Why would
Bernie?
Bernie, yeah. So it just doesn't jive with what most of us know about ourselves and our peers and our professional relationships. We just don't say things we don't believe, and we can't believe that he said that, and he has more credibility. So
okay, wow, that's like an ancient news cycle.
Yeah.
We talked so much about that on the show, and since then there's the Hillary Clinton remarks, and since then there's been the Mayor Lori Lightfoot remarks. So we'll break all three of them down. So Elizabeth Warren, her campaign put out that Bernie was saying that Bernie had told Elizabeth Warren in a private conversation that he did not believe a woman could be elected president. Bernie denied that he said it. It became a he said, she said thing. And then Elizabeth Warren wouldn't shake his hand at the end of the debate because she accused him of being a liar. Bernie said, well, you also accused me of being a liar. And my reaction to all that is that at best, there was a distortion of what was said 2 years ago, misrepresentation of what was said 2 years ago. Two sides could not agree to exactly what was said and how it came out. But the worst part about it is that I believe, and I have no proof of this, but I've said this many times, I believe it was a tactical decision by the Warren camp to exploit what they viewed as Bernie's weakness. And his weakness is that he's viewed by some people as being or running a campaign filled with misogynists. Loreen, that's what I believe. That's what I think it was. It wasn't about what he literally said, what he literally believes. It was a very cynical attempt to exploit what the polls have been showing. That's what, and I think it backfired on Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, and I've been, on the other side of media firestorms, and her campaign totally had control of the story. They could have shut it down every minute of the way, and they chose not to. So look at the actions. Don't look at the words and the PR stuff. Look at the actions. There's, I've explained this to a lot of people about, from my experience, it was purposeful. But, it backfired. We're moving on. He raised $1.7 million that day. So we're good.
Not only that, within 2 days, they were shaking hands, holding hands. They were in South Carolina. It backfired. She pulled back on it. Mm-hmm. I actually think it hurt Elizabeth Warren's campaign more than it hurt Bernie Sanders.
I mean, delegates were getting asked if they were going to pull back their endorsements, and I think that one in New Hampshire did. Switched it to, there wasn't a delegate in New Hampshire that switched her support from Warren to Klobuchar.
Because of this?
It's around the same time.
She went to Amy Klobuchar. Yeah. Okay. All right. So now we get to the Hillary Clinton message, which is that nobody likes him and he never gets anything done. So what's your thoughts on that?
It's not true. If you look at his record in Congress, there's plenty of stories that document all the things that he's done. And there was a video that was made by a supporter that went viral about a month ago called Rising Up, if you search it on Google. And, there's the media. They have clips of the media saying, what has he done? And then A.D. Barkin, who's a champion for Medicare for All, saying, one of the and just like what's happening now in Chicago, we're changing the narrative. He changed the narrative about what's possible and that's what they're afraid of, that he's going to be the Reagan for the progressive movement, where for the next generation, there will be no possibility for someone to run against what is possible. Everyone's running. Oh, it's impossible. Oh, it's impossible. Everything he wants is impossible. How is it impossible? It was in Teddy Roosevelt's platform. It was in FDR's platform. It was, it was in the Socialist Party's platform in 1912 or something like that. All of these things are entirely possible. And once they break through the propaganda, when we get to that watershed moment, and I think we've already reached that point where we will accept nothing else. The millennials are coming and Generation Z is going to eat them if they don't give it to us. So, they have no choice if they want a peaceful transfer of power to the next generation. This is what we demand.
Do you sometimes when you think about what you just said, like the millennials are demanding, the Zs are demanding it, and think that it's a 78-year-old guy? Is he 78? I want to say, like the oldest guy in the race is the voice that's captured the imaginations of younger voters.
And I think that's kind of like, I think a lot, because his parents were, or his father was a Jewish immigrant from Poland. His father's family died in the Holocaust. And, Hitler targeted socialists and Jews because they were champions for the oppressed. And so, Bernie hasn't lost that memory, and it still drives him. Like I can imagine when I'm that old, I'm still going to have the values I have now. And he never lost it. He never changed his values. And so, yeah, he's old, but the things we're talking about aren't new. These are old ideas. And he's just kind of like, people have talked about why isn't there a person of color who's, AOC is too young to run. And, Fred Hampton was killed. Martin Luther King was killed. A lot of our leaders who were speaking to these same messages, we've lost. And he's the guy there who's championing them, who we trust to fight for them alongside of us. And so even where he may be weak, he is a white man, and he's had to overcome the privilege that may have blinded him on some small issues. But he, unlike other politicians, when he's challenged on something that he's not perfect at, he listens and he changes, and it's a not me, us, wherever he might be weak, we will strengthen him.
You're going to let him know. And if he's weak on that subject. All right. What's about the notion that nobody likes him?
I mean, Hillary's defenders and establishment defenders have said, oh, it's because of the Beltway. The politicians don't like him, but good. I mean, people do like him. Tom Steyer appears to like him. Elizabeth Warren was surprisingly, not standing up about that. The press asked her about it, and she said, I'm not going to get into that. How is it hard to just say, I like him? Is that even that cannot be said. So, every day there's more problems with credibility and courage. I mean, it's going to take a lot more courage to stand up to the powers that be than it is to say that this likable man, you like him. But even there, she couldn't take a stand.
Well, we were talking about the blowback to what Bernie's professing, and you were saying that from here on out, it's going to be that much harder for mainstream Democratic politicians to deny that they can get something done.
Right.
So, for instance, let's think of healthcare for all. Think about Obamacare. When Obama passed Obamacare, he ruled out healthcare for all. Well, this is hard enough to pass as it is. We're probably, they blame passing Obamacare for losing the House, which I don't believe it for 2 seconds, but whatever. So we can't ask for any more. And now here we are, 9 years later, 8 years later, and that seems outdated. You follow what I'm saying? It's like,
it was a right-wing plan. I mean, the whole time when he was running on the continuation of the civil rights movement. And what was the civil rights movement but redefining what was possible in America? I mean, there were like a million Asian American residents of the United States, citizens of the United States before 1965. And after Martin Luther King and his movement, that's when, the Chinese Exclusion Act ended. That's when East Asians and South Asians and people from the Asian continent could come here as immigrants. And, the change in this country, we expected him to galvanize that again. We believed in it. I was there in Grant Park in 2008, and he just, made Rahm Emanuel his chief of staff and counted votes and didn't think beyond. So I was listening to a podcast about when Troy Davis, who was a man on death row, was going to be killed. I think it was in 2011, and I remember being on Daley Plaza to protest that. And when they announced that he had been killed, he had been executed, and how, even though I never met this man, I just mourned for the injustice that, all these people who knew much more about the case, felt. And I had learned about it. And they said that Obama never came out to stop it, even though it's a states' rights issue, whatever. Who cares if it's a states' rights issue? Do a sit-in, chain yourself to whatever you need to chain yourself to, and fight. And I think after he had been executed, his press guy put out a statement of, it's a states' rights issue. That's why the president couldn't do anything about it. And a lot of people lost faith in, what he was doing then or even before then. And the thing about Bernie is we don't think he's going to give up like that. He's not going to make Rahm Emanuel his chief of staff. He's going to make someone else his chief of staff.
Yeah, I can guarantee you he's not going to make
We're going to wield the power of the people. It's not so much, let's count up to 60 votes. It's, Nixon created the Environmental Protection Agency, not because he was counting votes, or it was because of a popular movement in the streets and the rivers were on fire. And that's the same crisis we face today. Our literal planet may not be capable of holding the human life that we have here. And they say that Republicans are climate deniers, but so are centrist Democrats. They propose plans that, we'll reduce carbon by half by 2050. Excuse me, half of the, world will be dead by then, or, displaced, and all these low-lying areas are already getting flooded repeatedly. We cannot wait that long. If you believe the scientists, which you say you do, then this needs a full stop. We need to take all the money we're putting into war, not all of it, but a strong percentage of it, and redirect it to building green infrastructure, retraining people, R&D. How do we turn this ship around fast? And we could do it. We absolutely, it would almost be easy if we had someone who was in the White House who believed in this.
All right, now let me deal with the third prong of criticism. You're on fire here, Loreen. So you've already taken on Elizabeth Warren's people and Hillary Clinton, now Mayor Lori Lightfoot.
And you got fans on the live stream chat as well, by the way. Jay Marie says, I love The Other Guys. That movie, The Other Guys? She loves it.
Your first guest ever. By the way,
I gave a reference from the movie, too. I'm a peacock. Let me fly.
Yeah.
I've never seen the movie.
I'm a peacock. You got to let me fly.
You've never seen The Other Guys?
Never seen The Other Guys.
Oh, my God. I've seen it twice. I just watched it about 6 months ago. That's why I was smiling when you...
And our good friend Radio Doogie weighed in and said, damn, she's good.
No, she's good. I told you she's good. All right.
That's correct.
She stood up to Trump and the EPA. And by the way, one more time, Trumpsters, defend her First Amendment rights, okay? All right, here we go. This is Lori Lightfoot, Mayor Lori Lightfoot, Mayor of the City of Chicago. And then before I say it, in full disclosure, I voted for Lori Lightfoot twice.
This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine.
Thank you, Lori. That's not the quote. So this is Lori Lightfoot talking to Lynn Sweet about presidential, her preference. She hadn't made up her mind yet. But she points out that she had not received a call from Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, but she did note that when they were in Chicago, they were very supportive of the Chicago Teachers Union strike, but didn't feel it was necessary to talk to the new black LGBTQ mayor. Apparently not progressive enough for them. And then she said this. She was asked, Lynn Sweet asked her what Lori Lightfoot is looking for in a Democratic nominee, and this was her response. Well, number one, I'm looking for somebody that I think truly has a shot at beating Trump, because the idea of 4 more years of Trump is incredibly frightening to me. So that's number one for me. Obviously, I'm looking for somebody whose values align with mine. I think the American people are incrementalists. We're not looking for revolution. We're looking for somebody who is practical, who's speaking to the values of the person, who's worrying about whether they have a paycheck, whether they're going to be able to take care of their kids, may have savings, build a future, and somebody who's going to be smart and able and put together a good team to take on the challenges that Americans are facing. What's your thoughts on what she had to say?
I guess she wants the candidates to call her for her endorsement. But Bernie didn't call me, and I endorsed him. And
didn't call me either, for that matter. Yeah.
But in terms of if as mayor of Chicago in the state of Illinois, who could be better for our state and our city than a candidate like Bernie Sanders? I mean, the states that are most it's like the red states receive more in federal taxes and the blue states pay out more, right? Because we have urban centers, the way the formulas are doled out. And, having someone like Bernie in the presidency can help us reform state politics, bring us the funds that we so desperately need that we're being starved of by federal, and I really didn't pay enough attention under Obama's administration. But, we're talking about if you want to stop climate change, one of the easiest way to do that is to make public transportation free for everybody. Chicago has an amazing public transportation infrastructure. Invest a little bit more in it. Make it free for people. People are just going to drive their cars less. They're going to get rid of their cars or just, find a balance where that's not really a thing. We can invest more in bike infrastructure. All these things, we need to think globally. And with a president who has, climate change, as he was rated 10 out of 10 by some environmental group, Sunrise Movement endorsed him, he truly has a vision for making our economy sustainable. And that would incredibly invigorate the Rust Belt states, of which she is, she's a daughter of Ohio. Now she's the mayor of Chicago. She, of all people, needs to take a look at the people around her, the people who didn't succeed in the corporate world, because most people didn't. She was resilient and smart, and she rose up and she conquered beyond what anyone imagined for her. And she has a lot to be proud of for doing that. But she needs to look back and remember that not everyone is as resilient and lucky as she was. And we need a Green New Deal. And that will reinvigorate the economies of all these cities that are suffering under, late stage capitalism. And she should strongly consider Sanders if she wants to see Chicago thrive.
And what about the concept of incrementalism versus revolution? I've heard this. I've heard this articulated in one form or another throughout the debates. I've watched every single debate, Loreen. Amy Klobuchar, for instance, or Pete Buttigieg, for instance.
Oh my God, Pete.
Well, we'll get to Pete in a little while.
On the front lines of corporate bread price fixing. But when they accused him of being on the front lines of corporate downsizing, he had no opposition to that. So he was fine with corporate downsizing, just not price fixing.
Got it. Okay.
But yeah, go back.
All right. So let's go back to the notion of incrementalism. Mm-hmm. You caught me off guard with that Pete Buttigieg reference. I'm not quite sure. I know the reference that you're getting at.
I got to show you the clip.
You'll show me the clip. I'm sure we'll take a break and I'll be all fired up about it. But Mayor Pete. All right. Anyway, the notion that we can get some of the things that Bernie wants, but we can't get all the things that Bernie wants, and we can't get them through Congress. So be realistic. Stop leading people to believe they can have something that they're never going to get. So I'm not going to make a big promise. I'm just going to make a little promise, and maybe I'll get half of the little promise. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what incrementalism versus revolution is all about. So what do you think? Can you build a movement?
That's again another capitalist telling us to believe what's possible in their mind, when she doesn't get to define what's possible. She can't say that we can't have healthcare for all. There was a guy who was tweeting that his mother worked all her life. Now she has Parkinson's, but their insurance will no longer pay for her therapy, her physical therapy, which costs $300 a day. So she's just going to come home, fall down everywhere, probably die of an injury, and he's absolutely miserable about that. And for someone who is completely out of touch with that kind of reality, who doesn't have to look into the eyes of their own mother and see them suffering due to insurance executives' profit margin, to say that liberation from that oppression is impossible. How dare you? Everything is possible. How are you to define what is possible for us? We will define what's possible through our collective 9 million citizens civically engaged, doing what's possible and discovering for ourselves. We have no idea what the next 30 years will be like. Let's say we implemented the Green New Deal. Like I want to challenge everyone to just imagine, and some people have, which is why they're so fired up. Imagine Bernie being president and doing what he said he would do. That we audit the Pentagon and suddenly we find billions of dollars that are available. So we do Medicare for all. We strengthen Social Security. We do banking at the post office. So now we don't have to have predatory payday loans in every poor community. And so now people aren't being nickeled and dimed out of their mortgages, and, reforming the real estate industry. Every single one of those would impact millions and millions of lives for people who, Bernie talked about the people who are dying of diseases of despair. There are people dying, I have friends who lost their children due to drug addiction, who were vibrant, young, 20-something millennials in college that I partied with, and how could that happen, And that's a lot. The people who don't vote, they are going to hear Bernie and think not all of them, but some of them will think maybe this guy will do something, and enough of them will come out to vote to swing it, and he'll do it. And that's what the capitalist class, the establishment Democratic Party needs to be challenged to do. And there's hope. In Seattle, we saw the liberals and the socialists unite around Kashama when Jeff Bezos went after all of them, and went after Kashama in particular in her city council race. And so there is hope that Democrats will come and go with the left if it is, in fact, Bernie that's the nominee.
All right. Loreen Targos is my guest. We're going to take a break. Come back. I'm going to ask her what her thoughts are on the fact that there are no candidates of color, as they say, on the debate stage among the top 5. Gets her thoughts on that issue when we return.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Mr. Joravsky, my God, man, take us to the weekend.
All right, a few minutes left with Loreen Targos, activist, EPA scientist.
Badass mother beep.
She's candidate for the Pam Grier Award, Badass Women in Chicago, and big Bernie supporter. And so she's been talking about why she supports Bernie. And I tell you, a lot of Elizabeth Warren supporters in the show this week. We had Rod Sawyer in here for Biden. So I've been really trying to even it out, get everybody there.
We did a good job on that this week.
Yes, we did.
Now if we could just find that one Mayor Pete person.
Oh, man. Mayor Pete's a tough one here.
No, there are no Mayor Pete supporters in Chicago.
Okay. There have to be some. But anyway, so Loreen alluded to an exchange that Mayor Pete had with a
New York Times.
I got to give the dude on the New York Times credit. He was coming at him strong.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who the gentleman is, but he's some member of the New York Times editorial board. I had a field day with the New York Times. Split decision on Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar. Come on, guys, make a decision, all right? One or the other.
I saw a meme online, the movie Office Space, when he's like, what would you do with $1 million? And the guy's like, 2 chicks at the same time. And then someone put a New York Times meme on that.
That is the news and views of Loreen Targos, not Ben Joravsky or Dr. D. But it's kind
I'm
of
a
like,
comedian.
yeah, you are a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
You made it like reference to 3 comedies today, which has got to be an award.
All right,
That's all I can watch. The world is too dark.
Well, who's your Mount Rushmore stand-up comics? We were talking
about if you had to put 4 comics, that's
boy.
Mount Rushmore, 4.
Oh,
well,
thanks
Mount Rushmore was a total destruction of a native mountain space, sacred space.
Okay,
but,
just the metaphor.
Yeah,
of like
the metaphor.
Yeah.
Ali Wong's great. Dave Chappelle's old stuff, and even his 4 Netflix specials. I haven't watched the even newer one that was bad. That had some controversy. Tom Segura I like a lot. There's just so many I'm forgetting. And then local people: Max Thomas, Jake Knoll.
You do know your comedy. And I like the generational thing. I'm old guy. So who are mine? George Carlin, Richard Pryor, Rodney Dangerfield, and Joan Rivers. Some like old school 70s comics.
Oh, good. Well, you are old man.
No, but I love Ali Wong. Ali Wong is hilarious. And if I'm doing young comics, Tiffany Haddish is just hilarious. I saw her last special.
Yeah, she had a great one where she did on Netflix where it's like they ready, and there was a comic on there who was I think half Puerto Rican or something, and she taught me some amazing Spanish curse words and phrases. So
see, you learn stuff from comedy, but I have to say this before we in passing, I say this all the time. There really is not much difference between Dave Chappelle today and Dave Chappelle 15 years ago. The world has changed,
right,
and sensibilities have changed. Because Dennis and I were listening to Dave Chappelle, a bit that he did from like 2002, was it, D? I forget, but it was like
04, right 04. When the show ended.
Yeah, he was doing Michael Jackson jokes, and like they were. It would have been incredibly offensive if it were done today. The crowd was loving it, and all the people say they love people who are like maybe 40 or to 50 now. They love Dave Chappelle. Go back and listen to what he was saying in 2000. Now they go, well, Benny's changed. Well, I don't think he really changed.
You know what show still stands up? Reno 911.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I actually watched that recently. So funny.
The guy in the short shorts. Love Reno. Yeah, put all Reno 911 on Mount Rushmore. All right, D, you got that thing ready to go. This is Mayor Pete. So let's give the New York Times. I give them a hard time. Their editorial board a hard time. So it's only fair is fair. I give him a shout out. This dude really came at Mayor Pete. Mayor Pete was ducking and dodging.
And what was this about again?
This had to do with Mayor Pete's roles when he started off with
no pun intended, roles. Bread.
Oh yes, that is correct. Very funny. Oh man, he's got $1 million of them.
Bread rolls. Bread rolls, not gender roles.
All right, so you're gonna play it?
Yeah, I'm gonna play it here. I tried finding it online. My computer's acting funky, so I'm just gonna play it from
out of Jimmy Dore. Come on now, show some love for Jimmy Dore.
You've been on the front lines of corporate downsizing. You've been on the front lines of corporate price fixing. You've been on the front lines of our misadventures.
I'm sorry,
of our misadventures in foreign policy. You've had direct experience of many of the things that make a lot of young people very angry about the way that this country is operating right now, you don't seem to embody that anger.
So the proposition that I've been on front lines of corporate price fixing is just to get that out of the way.
You worked for a company that was fixing bread prices.
No. I worked for a consulting company that had a client that may have been involved in fixing, or what was apparently in a scandal. I was not aware of the Canadian bread pricing scandal until last night.
But do you feel the anger that many young people feel about the state of the...
Yeah, of course, because it destroyed my city. I grew up surrounded by crumbling factories and empty houses. My city lost 30,000 of its 130,000 people, largely before I was born. So I'm under no illusions about the problems that are present in American capitalism generally, and were unleashed beginning with the Reagan era specifically. And while I may not be as emotive sometimes about my sense of anger or frustration or injustice, I would not be doing any of this if I were not propelled by a level of passion.
All right, there you go. So what was the point you were making earlier, now that we've heard it?
Just that he was totally, he pushed back hard on the bread price fixing, but corporate downsizing, no problem. And then how many people left South Bend because they couldn't find jobs? I wonder if that was from corporate downsizing from a consultant.
Very good point there. I won't argue with that one. But that was, by the way, Mayor Pete, in all his skillfulness, his nimbleness. I've been watching him a lot on the debates. I did not know about his career before the debates. And he has that ability to spin on a dime. So it's the pivot. It's a classic pivot. So you don't care about, of course I care about this. This gets to the heart of what's wrong with my city. And I don't know. We had Henry Davis come on this show, who is a councilman from South Bend. He's not a fan at all. He's been on the show 3 times. Not a fan of Mayor Pete at all. It really opened my eyes. A lot of TIF funding in South Bend. All right, get me going on that one. All right, all right, Loreen. So one of the criticisms that many of my guests make when they come on this show is they're disenchanted with the Democrats because the debates, it's come down. Somehow the process has resulted in only 6 people who can make the stage. Nobody of color, no Asian Americans, no Black Americans, no Hispanics, et cetera, and so forth. What's your thought about that?
We might take a look at the political murder of candidates at the grassroots. Look at the Democratic Party. Whenever there's look, what is Nancy Pelosi doing? She's blackballing any consultants, political strategists who work with up-and-coming candidates like AOC, who thankfully got that guy out of office, and now she's like a champion for, she just said, billionaires don't make $1 million, you take $1 million from the workers who did the labor to earn the $1 million.
Nancy Pelosi said
that?
No,
AOC.
Okay, I'm like, what?
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Yeah, okay.
But if she hadn't won that first race, they would be circling the wagons right now to make sure she didn't win a second time, and she'd have to overcome that. Similar to what they did with Bernie, circling the wagons, making sure that the media ices him out and whatever, and he is surviving in spite of all that. And when you want good grassroots candidates of color, you need to support them at the grassroots, and you need to stop all the institutional obstacles that block people from rising up from that level. When someone really has a good idea, who someone really wants to challenge the system, you think that they're going to survive longer than 2 years in the Illinois House? No. So then how are they ever going to run for president? And so you reason why you have someone like Kamala who gets elevated there, but she's a terrible candidate with terrible policies, with a terrible record on criminal justice, then yeah, people aren't going to trust her. And if she was saying the same stuff as Bernie's saying and had a record that reflected that passion, then of course she'd be leading. But her values weren't there. And so people see beyond, identity is one part, your racial identity and your gender is only one part of your identity. And there are many other parts of our identities that keep our lives downtrodden and difficult. And, Black teachers and white teachers are still maligned by the status quo when they're in the teachers union. So it needs to go beyond just race or gender.
Loreen Targos is her name. As I said, she's an activist here in the city of Chicago, and she's also a scientist at the EPA. And before I let you go, we've talked mostly about national politics. Usually when you come on with Byron Sixto Lopez, we do some city politics and we do some environmental politics. Before I let you go, anything you need people should be aware of about the Trump's continued onslaught at the EPA, what he's the cuts, the changes in policy, anything they should know, and any important information you want to divulge.
Yeah, so our local AFGE 704 is working really hard to, make sure our rank and file is represented and their voice is represented. And we're back at the contract negotiation table for our contract. And there's a website called protectepa.org where you can go and sign on to the EPA Workers' Bill of Rights. One thing that we're advocating for is to be able to divest from fossil fuels in our retirement funds. And we want to have that right available to every single federal worker. And right now we don't have that right. And so, the money that we earn from our labor, we don't have control over divesting from what's killing us. And so that's one of the things that we want in our EPA Worker Bill of Rights. And on the city level, people should be paying attention to the Development for All ordinance, where we're going to change the conversation in the city about affordable housing and how it's possible and how we can make sure that no more people are homeless someday, hopefully sooner rather than later.
All right, we'll bring, next time you come on, we'll talk about that Development for All ordinance. It hasn't got enough attention, I don't think. All right, thank you very much, Loreen Targos. And I also want to thank Rummana Hussain, our guest earlier in the show. And, of course, the man, the myth, the legend.
And before we get out of here, we want to remind everybody about our Benny J bonus interviews this weekend. Every weekend, we drop extra interviews for you to download at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites and wherever else you download your favorite podcast. Ben, I believe we have 2 Benny J bonus interviews.
And another one coming up today.
Oh, we're recording one today?
Yes.
All right. News to me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, first, let's find out about our first Benny J bonus interview that's going to be dropping on Saturday morning.
Number 1.
Our first Benny J bonus interview is with Sun-Times obit writer Maureen
Maureen O'Donnell. Man,
Ben, tell everybody about the interview.
Yeah, that's a little off the beaten path. It's not political, but Maureen O'Donnell, Loreen, I don't know if you know her. She's a great journalist, great writer. She's the obituary writer for the New York Times, for the Chicago Sun-Times, and she writes these stories about largely people that are not famous, great Chicagoans, and I always say they're like parables or fables, words you can live by, like the elders, you know what I mean, of a community, and who've had great lives that are sort of ignored and not known, and they get their little moment when Maureen O'Donnell writes about them. She's a very passionate woman, great writer, one of my favorite
There's so many
writers.
great people among us that we don't even, will you fight for a stranger that you've never met? There are amazing people out there, and it's great that she
does. In fact, she did one in Pilsen. The gentleman's name, we talked about it on the show. He was a Chorito salesman who would go up and down 18th Street, and he died. I think he was 90, I want to say. He was very old. And she just told us whole life story and the story of moving to Chicago from Mexico. So lots of stories like that. Maureen O'Donnell, love talking. And plus, she's been around Chicago, not quite as long as I have, but she knows her Chicago history, so it's always a blast talking with her.
Our host is really old, guys. All right, on to our Sunday bonus interview. By the way, that Maureen O'Donnell interview can be available for download by 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. All right, on to Sunday's interview, also available at 5 a.m.
Number 2.
Illinois Senator Rob Martwick.
Oh, Martwick.
Ben, tell us about
Rob Martwick is a state senator from the northwest side of Chicago. We talk about the Kimberly Lightford, Don Harmon battle to be who would be president of the Senate. It's interesting little insights that Rob Martwick offers about that fight. We talk about the role that the Senate President John Cullerton played in this gets at something Loreen was talking about, how everybody's a progressive, but we seem to have difficulties getting progressive policies passed, and many times our progressives use their power to stifle progressivity. So we talk about the role of the Senate President and some of the great fights.
Rent control now.
rent control is one of those issues. Another one is an elected school board. So, yeah, Rob Martwick, a lot of political talk with Rob Martwick.
Yeah, he's a good friend of the Ben Joravsky Show. It's the return of Illinois Senator, now Senator, before he wasn't a senator, now Senator Rob Martwick. That'll be available at 5 a.m. on Sunday and Monday morning. Well, Ben, surprise me. Who is it going to be?
Francisco Perez is going to come in, and we're going to be talking about crime, criminal justice in the city of Chicago.
What's Francisco Perez's title?
Yeah, I do not have his title in front of me. I knew you would ask me that. He's president of the United States.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Holy cow, we better clean up.
I know. Get rid of those
Looks
buttons.
like crap.
Get rid of those Bernie buttons. By the way,
no
just
kidding.
for the record, I got a Bernie button. I got an Elizabeth Warren button. I got I love Beto. Somehow or other, that found its way here.
Oh, yeah. Beto O'Rourke. Oh, man, that's a throwback.
Yeah.
But
You should put that Bernie sticker on top of all of them.
Ah, okay.
We had a Bernie 2020 bumper sticker up there. What happened to it? Someone must have came in here.
The oppressor came in.
The oppressor came and took
I
it.
knew it. So, yeah, that's going to be going on here. And before new week of news begins, catch up on the week that was with our Oh, What a Week It Was special. We're going to be releasing that on Monday night. We're going to try something a little different on Monday night as well. We're going to call it Beyond the Column. Ben Joravsky writes a weekly column for the Chicago Reader, and we're going to try and I got equipment to record now, so I'm going to take my stuff to Ben's house. There's going to be the Brown line. You'll be able to hear that every 5 minutes, but we're going to be talking about Ben Joravsky's column. We're calling it Beyond the Column, so be sure to check that out as well. It's this weekend's Benny J bonus material.
All right, very good. Yes, I think I'm going to write about the myths of likability. That's what I think I'm going to write about. Anyway, so that's what we have to look forward to. Again, thank you, Loreen. Thank you, Rummana Hussain. And, of course, the man, the myth, the legend, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. And as Loreen can tell you, back home in Alton, they call him Dr. Doobie. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. See you on Tuesday, everybody.
That is a pretty cool nickname. And remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows and Benny J bonus interviews, the ones I just mentioned, at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites and wherever else you download your favorite podcast downloaders. We live stream this program as well. It's true. Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites and the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel. Join us. Check out what the Benny J studio looks like. It's awesome. You know what I mean? Pretty cool, right? Got some stuff around here. And also join the live stream chat. Hang out with like-minded political people and a few Trump supporters. It's a good time. See you Tuesday.
That's correct.